Hey y'all, Greg Harmon, deceleration.news. Thanks for checking in with us here. We've got a number of guests, a number of kind of more instructional videos, interviews to share this week. We wanted to set time aside and hope going forward to do more segments dedicated to health and well-being. The intention of this broadcast from the beginning was to try to hold community space together to try to support one another, do good, and so outside of like the direct medical work and direct service in terms of like food delivery and distribution and some of that, we're hoping that by offering like some guided like meditation help, some instructions on how to create our own medicine from plants and from the herbs that we eat and use. In this case, we've got a local foods demonstration to help folks find cheap to / free food right there in them in our own communities and our own neighborhoods. So these are kind of like standing features we hope to integrate more in future broadcasts, lined up all here. So, I want to welcome again my partner Marisol Cortez, co-editor Deceleration, is doing some of the food demonstration. Sam and Suchil from The Human Path are back to their second kind of walkthrough, in this case, making healing food, healing herbs, and as well as Heather Wenrich with a guided meditation exercise and conversation. And it's all really, really helpful, really useful to me, and it has been having, participating in these interviews, and as all of this work has been, is talking to so many of the folks that we already have relationships with, Marisol and myself, just kind of like going a bit deeper, somehow like in the moment, the vulnerability of the moment, and the nature of the interview process, I suppose, where my experience is that we're beginning to open to each other in kind of new ways and more profound ways. So I've been really blessed by these relationships and these conversations, and I think that they will do a bit of good here too. So please use the comments if you are here and you've got a need, if you are by yourself, if you need someone to check up on you, if you just need someone to text with, let them know that you're not there by yourself, if there's something more practical that folks can be delivering, helping you with like food and some of the rest, or directing you towards resources for housing. Use the comments area. There's folks that are going to be on here. Some of the folks that I interview that are on this broadcast will be here watching the comments as well. And some of my friends, housing advocates and things that have been on previous shows. But we also try to, beyond kind of like holding and deepening our community, we want to make sure folks know that we still have power to affect change and to push back on predatory practices at the community level, as well as at political top-down kind of exploitative work of politicians. And so I want to share a couple efforts that are ongoing right now and hope that folks can lend their weight. There's this campaign out of San Antonio from Raices, the Free Them All initiative, and this is a call to our field office director at ICE to release those being detained, the families detained here and in the region. And I just want to kind of read from their letter. I believe this is one you can sign on if you go over here to raicestexas.org, take action. You'll be able to find this initiative, and I believe sign on and show support. But let me bring on just what they've sent out, the letter itself. This is to the regional director, essentially recognizing and asserting, as we all know, that those who are in incarcerated situations, those who are in deep populated areas, they're not able to socially distance, obviously. Immigrant populations are already taken advantage of, that we know in the past have gone without, immunizations, died in custody. Just the conditions over the last few years have been well documented. And so we want to definitely make sure that those who are most vulnerable during this time, that we can stand up for them. In this letter here it states, oops, sorry about that. Yeah, so it's unsafe for those who are being detained as well as those working in these facilities. And then here in this case is this reference to Carnes family detention, that their response has been to keep families out and limit community visitation. So, and that there are pregnant women and infants and under 2, and several of those already experiencing and exhibiting flu-like symptoms that may be COVID-19. And so the call here, let me just scroll down to the bottom, to suspend deportation activity on top of that, that it's been reported, and this is the first time I've seen this reference, but it's been reported that deportees from the U.S. are going into their country of origin or to third. We know folks are being sent, a lot of folks are being sent to Guatemala who are not from there, and not only encountering conditions, where they're, kidnapped, raped, murdered, arriving in very unfamiliar territory, but here's a reference that this process is spreading COVID around the world. And so anyway, so I do encourage folks to go and check out this campaign and support the work ongoing there. In addition to that, here's one that's another immediate action at the Alamo. I just found out about this today. Our friends at the American Indians of Texas at Spanish Colonial Missions, that their bodies discovered, again, more bodies at the Alamo, at the cemetery we know as the Alamo. And there is an effort to have them exhumed, have them stored for a decade, and then released or reburied at the, what is it? Monk's chambers, I guess. So anyway, there's contact information here to be in solidarity with AIT and stand for indigenous peoples' rights and sovereignty in the Valero. So this is Ramon Vasquez, the executive director at AIT, writing. I quote. That the GLO, the General Land Office, and the Alamo Trust have shown a total disregard for the lineal descendants, in this case, the Tapilam and Cuautacan people, and AIT representing there, and the tribal community as the most culturally affiliated with those remains. The most shocking, Ramon writes, is that the GLO and Alamo Trust would proceed with this request in the time of a global pandemic, and that this is a deliberate attempt to minimize the participation of concerned citizens. And so, yeah, please do send your thoughts, send your support. This is the contact information. This is the Texas Historical District asking them to deny this permit to excavate these remains. On the topic of things happening under the cover of COVID, right? One of the things that we at Deceleration have covered has been the total destruction of our only known rookery, I believe, in San Antonio, where water birds, migratory birds, it's like our little Atzalan on the west side, have been coming for over four decades or more. And just torn apart and destroyed by the city of San Antonio, and those the running theory of justification being that some of those birds had flown over or were feeding at a landfill on the other side of the Kelly airfield and were a danger to navigation. They're like, one a year compared to, these massive these other birds and other issues that they have at the airfield and international airport. So under cover of COVID, that war on the birds continues, and we caught them using pyrotechnics and lasers and stuff. Some of these birds have come back, and they're trying to nest over in Southtown on the San Antonio River, where birds have been for an awful long time nesting, and they're fighting them there. They're scaring them off at Brackenridge. So apparently there's no place where it's safe to be a bird trying to raise a family. Anyway, that's something I'm deeply concerned about, and want to encourage people to go to SaveBirdIsland.com. And then our water, our power. So we've had a lot of really awesome conversations in the last few weeks, last 2 to 3 weeks. And one was with folks who really like trying to chart a way or imagine what it looks like a just transition through this period with our, our water, our electric utilities, gas, into, through a climate justice, environmental justice, and just transition lens, so that when we do arrive, when, like right now, our utilities have paused the disconnects, right? So people are behind on bills. They won't be disconnected, but that money, the bills are still accruing, and that when we come to that point where the disaster, is called off or reduced to that whatever level is determined, that all those bills come due. The rents that have been are being supplemented with other funds, and the utilities and all the rest. And so what does that look like? What's the plan for that? And how do we take charge or begin to build community and a deeper, more just culture on that side? And so this will be a conversation with some of those participants from you can go back and see, I think it was the last episode 5. And folks, we've got Nikki Johnson, a community and housing advocate, Didi Balmeras from Public Citizen, excellent organizer there, Dr. Meredith McGuire, many of you probably know for her work with the utilities and the particularly the rate structures and that she can demonstrates again and again very effectively how the way the rates are structured at SAWS, particularly the lowest income, those who struggle the most with their bills, are bearing the weight, an undue share of the total that SAWS is putting on the city, particularly for big projects like the $3 billion Easter Ridge pipeline, which isn't coming online any day now. So anyway, there's only like 100 seats there, so check this URL and come in and join us. So this is a conversation Thursday night. I see Jessica over here with questions about undercovered of COVID-19, how essential services are defined, does not serve our gente or our earth. Definitely noted and agree with you. So a quick promo. This is, and again, I mentioned like the herb making, the medicine, how we can make our own medicine. This is Sam and Suchil. They're going to be out momentarily.
It's really good for a lot of the stuff we have going on right now, whether it's flu or colds or even coronavirus, some of the symptoms that you're getting with that.
So they've been on before, and I'm really excited about that segment. That's deeper into the show here, so I hope the folks, y'all are able to stick around for that. It's a demonstration. Heather Wenrich is an excellent meditation instructor.
Whatever you're doing, if you're still having to go out and work, which is very stressful right now, is to stop and just listen.
So she's just a fantastic and a wonderful human being. And just a quick note, I just was getting this information pretty late. Jessica actually was helping me here. I'm asking what folks can do to support the housing justice right now, where we know resources are being bent, are being skewed, and being kind of siphoned off by the landlords, right? So they're going to be the funnel, the channel by which renters in San Antonio are able to receive benefit to survive this time, rather than those funds going directly to the renters, to the people themselves. So this is an ongoing issue, ongoing conversation, and one of the things that I've been asked to share is this link to Neighborhood and Housing Services. It's a needs assessment survey. So if you're able to, and you are a renter in San Antonio and you want to let folks with the city know what your situation is, you can talk about, if you're getting notices from your landlord that you shouldn't be getting, because right now we're in an eviction freeze, but that doesn't mean you can't get harassing language or letters. I believe that's correct. But we need to make sure that those stories are told, those stories are able to access, so we can do better by you as a city and as a community. And I want to just kind of tee this up. I mentioned Marisol, and yes, I'm having this green screen fixation right now. this is our health and wellness broadcast, and so these are various temples and settings that I'm putting myself into to try to maintain that, because I'm not feeling it right now. I'm not feeling as grounded as I'd like, but these conversations help a lot. They help me. So I am introducing here Marisol Cortez, my partner, my lovely partner at Deceleration in Life, and with this lot of fun making this instructional on how to make nopalitos. So hang with us.
So one of the things that's been kind of challenging is that with it being more difficult with the coronavirus pandemic to get to the grocery store, we run out of fresh produce, and it's hard to get produce oftentimes in a lot of neighborhoods. But there's one thing that's growing in your yard that's really easy to harvest and maybe a little bit more complicated to make if you've never made it before, but we're going to show you how today, and it's nopales. The first thing you want to do is look for the youngest petals, and you can recognize them because they're lighter green than the big tough ones, which are older. They are tender, and the spines are not fully developed yet. They still do have little stickers, so be careful. Just hold them in between the sticker area and you'll be fine. But they do have little stickers, so watch out. Next, of course, you want to wash your hands. 20 seconds, sing happy birthday twice. Then what you want to do is get your paddle, cut the tip off, and then start cutting around the edges of the paddle, because there's a lot of stickers that are right around the edges, and the easiest thing is just to slice around the perimeter there to get them. And then all that you have left is the ones on the main faces of the paddle, front and back, and those are maybe the most kind of intimidating part to get off, but they're really not, it's really not that hard if you kind of get your technique, because the stickers are on top of this little raised bump on the paddle, and all you really got to do is just run your knife blade up against them and they kind of pop right off. And it doesn't matter if you hold the paddle with the stickers pointing away from you or pointing towards you, your knife is just going to catch those bumps and it's just going to come off like that. It's actually really satisfying to do. And there you go. Now what you want to do is wash the paddles off once you've gotten the stickers off. It's kind of like cutting your hair first and then washing it. You want to rinse them, and any little stickers that might have been left behind, that's a good way to get them off. But usually I've noticed that there's really not anything, no stickers on the paddles by the time you pop them off with your knife. I should mention that just inevitably I always end up with just one or two little stickers in my fingers, but they don't hurt really, they're just annoying, so kind of have some tweezers maybe at the ready just to pull those out. And if you're nervous about the possibility of eating some stickers accidentally, don't worry, it's never happened before when I've made nopales. Next step is to just start slicing your cactus into little strips, and this part is also really satisfying because if you've picked the right kind of paddles, they're very tender and they slice really well. It really doesn't matter if you cut against the grain of the cactus. There's not really a grain, but it just doesn't matter like if you cut them vertically, horizontally, diagonally, they all slice up really well.
Or should I stay calm and panic like everyone can see my youth hanging by a thread.
Okay, here we are with our nopales, and now it's time to start slicing up the other stuff you want to add to your nopales while they're cooking. This is a good time to kind of clean out your refrigerator. The basic stuff that I always like to add is onion. And I like to slice, you could dice it too, but I like to slice it into thin little strips. And tomato. Usually I might do just like half a tomato, but today I'm going to do a whole tomato because this tomato is getting pretty soft in my fridge and I don't want it to go bad, so I'm just going to use the whole thing. And then I also have some chiles that I had chopped this morning but I didn't use. And it would also be nice to be able to add cilantro if you have it. We don't have it today, so I'm just going to do those three things, the onion, the tomato, and the chiles. You can just dice up that tomato like that. Here it is in the pan, ready to go to start cooking. You're going to grab your oil, olive oil, canola oil, whatever you got. And then you're going to add your nopales, your onions, at this point you're going to put in your tomatoes. And I'm actually going to wait on the chiles. I'm going to add them at the end, both because I like them a little crispier and not super soft, and because when you're cooking chiles it can really spice up your whole kitchen and make it hard to breathe sometimes. Alright, now we're going to start cooking, and we're going to add some vinegar. It can be apple cider vinegar, it can be white vinegar, just a little bit. And we're going to add some salt. And actually, if I was going to go back and do this recipe again, I think I would probably, instead of just plain salt, use like a bouillon cube or something. Veggie bouillon or chicken bouillon or whatever you like to use, that adds flavor as well as salt. You're going to set your heat to like medium, about 6. Stir it up, and what your goal at this point is to get all of the babas to come out. So the salt is going to extract the moisture and the sticky, like the babas, the saliva, the sticky, kind of like okra. It's very slimy, so you want to get all that slime to start sweating out. And then the vinegar, the acid, as well as the acid in the tomato, are going to start breaking down that slime, so that when you eat it, it doesn't taste slimy anymore. It's just tender and delicious.
Now it's in focus.
So here you can see after a couple minutes that the salt is beginning to draw out the moisture from the nopales and from the tomatoes, and it's starting to get kind of liquidy, starting to get some of those babas coming out. After another couple minutes, it's even more liquidy, and you can start letting the cactus simmer and get softer in that tomatoey liquid. And you just want all of that liquid to cook down, basically. So let it simmer without a lid or anything like that for a few minutes. So now all of your liquids cook down, it's drier, and in the next step what you want to do is add water and then let it cook down, let the liquid evaporate again.
Okay.
So here we go with the water, and you're basically, I don't ever measure it really, so it's just enough. You don't want to like make a soup or anything like that, but you want to get enough in there to kind of, I think of it as like washing off the babas, washing your cactus, because that's the other thing, in addition to the acid and the heat that's going to break down that sliminess, is just having it kind of rinse off a couple of times and cook in that liquid. So here we go, we're going to let it cook down again. This time we're going to put a lid on top of it and turn the heat down to simmer it maybe like 2 or 3. Now it's cooking down again, it's getting sticky, it's getting drier, and I'm actually going to add another round of water to rinse off that cactus, rinse off the nopales again. But the cool thing about this recipe is really that you can kind of just, you know, your mileage may vary. Like maybe it's ready to you at this point, you just want to eat it. I like to think, oh, if I soak it a bunch of time, if I add more liquid and kind of saute it for a long period of time, it's going to get very tender, it's going to get very flavorful. But this is not a recipe that, you know, I grew up making. I grew up eating it out of a jar. So it's not like it's a traditional, you know, passed down from generations kind of thing. This is just something that I experimented with, and this is how it works for me. So it's really flexible, however it works for you. Okay, now it's time to add the chiles because we're nearing the end. And this last round, I'm just letting it cook down without a lid again. I have the heat turned up a little higher so that it cooks down more quickly. Because by this time, you might be starting to get impatient. You want to test it, see if it tastes good. It's ready. And it's ready. Get it on your plate. So there you have it. That's how you make nopales. And tonight we're going to have it with some leftover papas and frijoles from breakfast this morning. But you can eat it in a lot of other ways. It's totally vegan the way we made it tonight. But you can eat it with meat. You can eat it with eggs. You could put it in tacos. It's delicious. And the best part is it's totally free. It's just from your backyard. So get picked.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Always a lot of fun to make. And you may want to check the Cactus. I mean, we've got a lot in our front and our back. It was the fresh ones, the baby ones, which came on about 2 weeks ago or so. So we're starting to see the end of that. But definitely look for those lighter ones, those softer ones. It'll make a big difference. So with food such a high item right now, our very first broadcast we had Brian Gordon on. We've had, you know, the plant walk with Sam Kaufman. Now he's back with his wife Sue Chiu, and it's people are really paying attention. I got a notice today. I think Swoo's doing some kits, and it's just all over, right? You've seen probably the images of the cars lined up at the food bank. But I want to direct folks. I mean, this is something that Brian has really taken off. He started his YouTube channel that's really quite good. And obviously, so Google Grow Food SA, or you could type in his early breakdancer website, the No Sense 5000. That he's appropriating now for the food. So Knuckles, check out Knuckles. And recommended deceleration seal of approval. Also seal of approval, CENTRO. Many of you, the folks that are gravitating into the sphere of this broadcast, know up on North Main, kind of a clearinghouse for all things kind of sustainability, a lot of gardening. They've been doing a huge amount of gardening work and have had just piles and piles of seeds over there this last year. I don't know where they showed up. I mean, I know that they've had some assistance in bringing those in, but the seeds, many seeds are still there. Check them out here, send them an email, what have you. If you make arrangements, they're closed, but if you make arrangements, you can still access and get seeds to be planting right now. We just put down here a bunch of okra, and you know, a couple days later, boom, it's coming up. But in addition to that, they've got this, let me see if I can open, where is that? Oh yeah, here it is. They've got this incredible resource guide that they put together, Growing Abundance here, and I've got a link to share with that, but I just want to scroll through it real quick. In addition to the seeds and everything, here's all their contact information. I mean, they've got, this is a directory on how-to for our area, right? Here's some of their recommended books on gardening here, nurseries that remain open, oh, look at that, curbside, dies on here, curbside distribution. Get myself out of the way, and yeah, just so much good information here. Let me see, I think I have a link to share from that, but maybe I dropped it along the way. But anyway, show up on there. Sorry, Di, I dropped. Maybe you can put that in the comments here. I think you've got a good link to share there. So in addition to that, so this interview with Sam and Suchil, this demonstration on healing herbs, creating your own medicine, relies upon raw honey. And so it's not always easily found in like the HEB. There are some apiaries around San Antonio, some smaller scale dealers. I think Sprouts might stock regularly raw honey, but here's some resources. These are also, that Buying Club is a good one. It's on Fredericksburg and 410. It's in the broadcast also, but I wanted to make sure to put this up on here, easily accessible. But let me welcome in Sam and Suchil. I think this is really excellent assistance and a good community service.
So Suchil and I were going to talk a little bit about medicine making today. Last time when I was talking with Greg, we did something in the yard. I did a little plant walk. We talked about a few herbs. And I think it's important to be able to say, okay, well, there we have the plants, there we have the herbs. So how do we actually turn that into, clinical potency medicine? What are some of the different ways we can do that? And there's a whole range of complicated to simple ways that we can turn those plants into medicine, things that you can just do at home very easily. And of course, everybody knows how to make tea. But beyond that, there's other things that we can do that are going to work better for certain kinds of herbs. And so that's what we wanted to demonstrate today, is just a few examples of things you can do at home, but also maybe just introduce you kind of at a high level of some of the other things we do here in the clinic in order to make medicine in our apothecary for our clinic, and to be able to make, clinical potency medicine that we make.
All right. So I'm going to start us off by showing how to make a very simple medicine called an electuary. This is going to be a carminative electuary that you can make very easily in just a matter of minutes and put it on your countertop and use it as you need to. So the one that we're going to make today, all of the ingredients are commonly found in most kitchens, and the most expensive item here is raw honey.
But when we talk about a carminative, generally we're talking about something that helps digestion, particularly after we've eaten. So a carminative usually is something that, if a person maybe has a hard time digesting food after they've eaten, and it could be something as complicated as GERD, as reflux, but more likely just a little bit of stomach upset, or just you just want to digest your food better. Common carminatives that everybody knows would be things like fennel seed, or mint. So we can make something that's not only going to help your digestion, but actually is really good to eat. So you can think of this. Maybe you've got some issues with pre-diabetes, or you just really have a sweet tooth and you want something that'll help your digestion, but you don't want to just load down on eating that candy bar or that bowl of ice cream after dinner. That's not going to be really as good for your digestion anyway. So it's better health while it also tastes good, and it helps your digestion.
Yeah, the one that we're going to do today, actually, when you finish it, it has a consistency a lot like dulce de leche. And depending on how long you let it go, it's almost like a liquid caramel. So it's pretty cool. We have the full recipe, and we don't have the exact same ingredients that we're going to work with today. But with the exception of fennel seed, we have everything that we have on our website, the Facebook page. So I'm going to walk you through the steps of how to put together this electuary, and we'll move over here. Okay. You want to have a jar. You can use a quart mason jar. You can use an empty, clean salsa jar, whatever you have in your kitchen. That works really well. A tablespoon. Some chopsticks from the last time you did takeout. I've got some raw honey here. So you can get raw honey at the grocery store. This one right here, there are a couple of apiaries here right outside of San Antonio. This one is Geyer Farms, and we use them a lot for making medicine, and they have wonderful honey. And then the last item that is materials or equipment is a Mr. Coffee grinder. All right, so now I'm going to go through the ingredients that we're going to use for making this electuary. And again, you can use the things that you have in your own kitchen. These are ones that are a part of this recipe, and they just work really well. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to put equal parts of each one of these into our mason jar. So I'll start off by, as I go through them, I'll just list them off. The first one is peppercorns, black peppercorns. So this one I use frequently when I'm making a bitters formula. And it's also, you wouldn't think that this would be something that would go well with honey, but all of the herbs that you're going to see here that we're using, these culinary herbs, are all the chai herbs as well, and they work very well together. So you can see here, I'm not doing a full tablespoon. I'm not going to need as much. So this is the quantity I wanted to show you. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grind this up a little bit. what I want to do here is to create more surface area that this herb is, it's going to be basically opened up so that we can get more of the herb into the solvent being our honey, okay? Good. Okay, so that's our black pepper. Then I'm going to move on to cinnamon sticks. You can get, you can get these, all of these things you can get very easily at international grocery stores. And here in San Antonio, we have Alibaba over there on Wurzbach. So just a quick pulse here. Now, when I'm using my spice grinder to grind these up, I'm not doing that because I don't get a full agitation. I don't get a full grind. But when I rotate it like this, I get more of the cinnamon broken up. So it's gone from bark. And that's roughly about a tablespoon. Got a little piece there. Okay. And my next one is star anise. People can be very opinionated about star anise. It's one of those, it has that strong licorice flavor to it. I'm putting 2 in there. And it's actually, and it's a real key player when you have a chai formulation. And it's one of those, it really, you don't realize until you don't have it how much you need it. So it's, even if you're not a fan of star anise, this is one that's really excellent for this, and it is so good for the digestion. So, all right. So I don't know if you can see this or not, but I've got it pretty well pulsed. It's not a powder, but it's nice and broken down, so that we can easily use that. Now I'm going to move on to the next one, which is ginger root. So you can use, what we want on all of these is we want these to all be dried. We want these to all be dried herbs. And I will talk about that as I start to pour in the honey. If they are dried, they're not going to have a lot of moisture in them. And this will remain shelf stable. If you have something with moisture in it, it's not going to last as long, and it's not going to do as well sitting on your countertop. So to that end, when you are in the grocery store, sometimes you can find the dry herb, you can find powdered herb, but you want to avoid getting the powdered herb off of the spice aisle, because a lot of time those are really effectively inert because they've been sitting there for God knows how long. And before that, they were in a warehouse. And before that, they were to distributors. And how long has it really been since this was actually, first harvested? So when you can, work with things that are as fresh as possible, if that means drying out some ginger root that you have on your countertop already, that's a really good start. I'll talk about fresh herbs in just a second. All right. So my ginger herb, that's nice. It's not a fine powder, but it's nice, basically a coarse mixture that we have there. Now I'm going to move on to nutmeg. So the nutmeg, I really love nutmeg, and this is one of those, it can substitute a lot of times for vanilla when you are cooking things. And when you get it like this, a lot of times you can grate it to get the absolute freshest version of working with nutmeg. Excellent if you're dealing with things like insomnia and so forth, or nervousness, anxiety, that sort of thing. But in what we're going to do is we're just going to drop it in here, and we're going to grind it up. There we go. All right. Got almost all of it in there. Here's where my chopstick is going to come into play. This is going to help me get all the pieces out of my spice grinder there. I do have one little piece. I'm not going to worry about it for us, but if I were doing this and I had a little bit more time, this is something I would spend the time of grinding everything down to about the same consistency, kind of like a powder. But again, we don't want to necessarily grab the powder unless that's all that you got. And then just remember, having something is better than having nothing. So work with the things that you have, and just know that some things will give you a little bit more effect, and the format that you'll get more effect from is when it's in its raw form, like we're dealing here. So this next one is allspice. We're getting the berries and not the already ground up. You don't need as much, a tablespoon of that. It's ground up, it's added in. And the next one that we're going to move on to is our cloves. This is the one, again, that people are awfully opinionated about because they have strong feelings, strong pumpkin spice feelings about the use of cloves. A lot of people really don't like it. But this is another one. You want to have it for its medicinal effects, and you also want to have it because it really develops all of these things together. It develops the overall effect of this electuary. So I'm just putting in not quite a full tablespoon here, maybe half a tablespoon or so, but I want to have it in there because it's an important ingredient. And I'm just going to grind it up real quick. All right, so we've got another coarse grind. Here we go. And we're on to our final ingredient here, which is green cardamom seeds, these pods. When you grind these guys up, they are, this is one of my favorite herbs to work with in the chai world. They will be a little bit stringy, a little bit pod. They'll have a little bit of fiber from the pod when you go to make them, and that's totally fine and normal. What we're going to do after all of this is after it sits for a bit is we're going to strain it. So I'm not going to worry about the texture not being as consistent as the other one. And again, see, I don't know if you can see this or not, but you see it looks like there's a lot of different fiber types of texture in there, and that's totally fine. So when you break open these green, or if you have them black, cardamom seeds, it's going to have a strong, very, it has a very clean, sharp, aromatic smell similar to eucalyptus. And I use the green cardamom seeds every morning for my mom. My mom has severe asthma, and I will strike open 2 of those green cardamom seeds every morning and put it in with her respiratory tea. And it has a very, it's a bronchodilator, so it has a very invigorating effect for her that allows her to breathe a little bit easier. And so that's part of her self-care that we do every morning without fail. And that's something, it's one of the older folk remedies, and it's something that is, anybody can do it. It's all you have to do is just grab a couple of the green cardamom seeds or the pods and break them open. You don't want to have the green cardamom powder because you're just not getting as much of the effectiveness. And again, you can't guarantee how old it is because there's no way of knowing how long it's been powdered. And then the next step, we're almost done with this. This is how easy it is. The next step, I'm going to fill this about, I want this to be really strong. So I'm going to fill it about halfway. If I did it more, it would be a little bit weaker, but I'm just going to go with about a pint. So half of my quart jar. All right. And then I have my trusty chopstick, and I'm going to stir this up. Now, what you do with an electuary typically is you will take these and apply heat to them. What I do, I have several up in my kitchen that I've been working with. You can let them, you want to let them go at least, if you're applying heat, manually heat, like putting it into, letting it sit into a heat source, like setting it on top of a Himalayan salt lamp, for example, you can have this ready to go in a few days. All right. But if you're like me and you want to get all of the medicinal benefits as much as you can from the honey, then I'm not going to heat it much above room temperature. So when I'm cooking something on my stovetop, I'll put it close to it so that I can get the heat that way, and I will rotate my jar like this over and over so that the honey is agitated and it's rotating constantly, but I'm not manually adding heat to it. When you go over about 100 degrees, then you're going to start degrading the medicinal benefits of your raw honey, and then it becomes more of a confection and less of a medicine. Okay, so keeping it as close to normal as possible. You can put it on your back porch. Anything like that, you'll get a lot more out of this, okay? So the gist of what we have here, we have all of our herbs in there. We have our raw honey in there. It's nice and stirred up. And from this point, I would put it on my stovetop or my warm back porch. Or if I were going to put it in a crock pot, this is a caveat. If you put it into a crock pot, you have to be very careful because even at the lowest setting, which is warm, that's going to be too hot. And it's going to start to degrade this honey. So what we have here right now is this is the first start of our electuary. And we're going to allow this over a period of days to weeks, depending on that. I have some of these that are sitting in my apothecary work office that I've had there for, 2 and 3 years when I work with other types of things. And it's totally fine. They're shelf stable. There are electuaries that they have found in Egyptian tombs that are thousands of years old, and they're still potent and they're still stable. So that part is not the concern. But you just want to make sure to be careful about the heat. So at the point when I am ready to use this, if you have this at a grind that is like, I don't know if you can see this or not, but there are the pieces of the herbs in here. There's cinnamon bark and there's a little bit of nutmeg and the peppercorns. You would not want to spoon this out and put it or eat it directly because you could chip a tooth. Okay. But if you want to have it something that you can put into your tea, the final step is when it's ready to go, it's fully infused and it tastes just about right to you and it has that proper strength to it, is you would strain it through some cheesecloth. And then what you have left over is you'll have, and I will frequently do this when I make electuaries, is if I make one, let's say with lavender, rose petals, and citrus peel and rosemary. Is I will take that, I'll strain out all of the botanicals, I'll squish it out with a spoon through a sieve so that I have just the honey electuary. And then with all of that that's left over, the plant matter, I'll take that and I'll put it into a pitcher. I'll pour some hot boiling water over it and I have an herbal tea. It's very sweet. It's really good in the summertime and you're still getting a lot of the same benefits from it. It's just one more way of getting medicine into the system. All right. So that is the basic quick and dirty method of making an electuary at home. You can work with the things that you have. If you have orange peel, from all of the oranges that you might be having during COVID-19, you're at home and you're eating more oranges than you ever have in your life, and you're wondering what to do with those peels, and you've already made your vinegar orange house cleaner, then you can save some of those and you can make orange peel. You can put in cocoa powder if it's unsweetened, cacao nibs, carob bark. You can put all different types of things in there. Hibiscus and rose, lemon peel, all those things, and add them into the raw honey. And you can have a really unique way of making homegrown kitchen medicine that's also very effective. I have students who have used this one for a lot more than just carminative effects because it is very supportive of both the respiratory and the cardiac system. So you can have this something that you add in a spoonful into your coffee after you strain it. Okay, so you don't want to bite down on a peppercorn and chip a tooth. So, or you can put it onto like a piece of bread with some butter and then a little bit of this on top of it. There's so many ways that you can apply this and it crosses borders. It's not just one thing. Yes, it is digestive, but it's also very supportive of the respiratory system and the cardiovascular system as well. I have one more note I wanted to add on this before we wrap this up is when we talked about having dry herbs in the in the electuary format, I mentioned that you wanted to try to avoid working with things that are fresh, and here's why. So the very first time that I made an electuary, years and years and years ago, I did it I saw a recipe somewhere online using fresh oranges, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to make tangerine electuary. That's going to be fantastic. So I just peeled a tangerine, and I put it into a mason jar and I covered it with honey. And each day I came back and it was thinner and thinner. So right now our honey is very viscous. So it's actually pretty warm in our apothecary. So it's a little bit more flowing than it would normally be sitting on a cool countertop. But I was noticing that my electuary, when I put in the fresh citrus, was very watery. And it was not even 5 days into it to where it had the consistency, instead of being thick like honey, it had the consistency of being more like water. And then I noticed almost immediately it started to mold. So when you have the fresh plant matter, whether it's a fresh ginger or fresh citrus or whatever, what you're creating is not necessarily in the lecture where you're creating a syrup, and those do need to go. You can do that, but you just want to make sure that you put it into the refrigerator, and then from that point, your shelf life is somewhere between 1 to 2 weeks max.
Okay, yeah, Suchil and Sam Kaufman at the Human Path, thank you guys for joining us again. I am drying my loquat leaves, inspired by the garden walk that Sam gave a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. But I don't want to get through, so now I'm another temple. In keeping with the wellness theme, I've got this big Mormon temple behind me, looming behind me. But I do want to share just basic resources for right now. Usually I have this up at the top of the show. I went ahead, I did this screening tool. I went online, did the screening tool. I started coming down with something and took my temperature and did this. So check yourself if you're feeling worn down, if you're feeling, you're flu-ish, all those signs and symptoms. There's a tool that the city has online where you can check and see if you're hitting all those dangerous markers. And if you are, you may qualify then for these limited availability of tests that we have here. So there's that. The questions and answers that the city, their helpline that has set up. There's resources there. Meals on Wheels is for our elders and homebound, but are looking for volunteers still to prepare kind of like meal boxes, I believe. The Blood and Tissue Center, obviously, that's another place where they'll do kind of a rudimentary screening before they're going to sit you down and draw your blood. And then the school meals here, actually, I put a short URL. Those things expire after a week or so. Let me put in the comments, actually. This is a really good, something that the Express News put together, and where you can check, whoops, not you. I mean, I don't mean it like that. Come on. But this is a good resource too, because the school districts have gone, they were doing every day, pickup time for kids for missed, school lunches and breakfasts. And they're now doing, many of them have gone to, every 2 to 3 days, but also may have food and meals available for kind of over the weekend. So check that again, I'll just put that up again. This link here is in the comments if you've got young ones like us. And now on to my dear friend Heather, our conversation about mental wellness and meditation. I'll just have to say to start, I'm really excited about having you on. I'm really excited about this feature. I'm really excited about bringing wellness into this broadcast because as we were talking, people across the spectrum, whether they're out of work, whether they're getting by on half salary, whether they're looking at forced eviction, relocation, are feeling ill themselves. I think this is critical for everyone. Even just the fact of it. Maybe this is maybe an opening question. So this happens to me all the time, and I think maybe I stop breathing. And unconsciously I'm not. And like yesterday, so there's a wonderful woman, she said something, and I just tell people to take a breath. And as soon as she said breath, I went, is that common? Do we really need reminders to breathe?
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned it, because it's something that I wanted to bring up, because when you're feeling overwhelmed or in the midst of chaos, it's really common to start, they might call it apnea, where you stop breathing, or where you do very shallow breaths, and you're not getting a full inhalation. So, I sometimes, it's just become a funny habit that I'll just ask myself, like, am I breathing? How am I breathing? And just even put my hand on my belly and feel. And it really brings your attention into your body. And then you start paying attention to the fact that you're not breathing.
Well, speaking of not breathing, can I ask you how you are doing? Not just breathing practice, but just generally, are you safe? Are you practicing good life affirming patterns of behavior? Do you have needs that you want to present to those who are watching and to the broader community?
Well, thanks for asking me. I actually feel very fortunate right now. I have food, I have space. I'm able to stay at home with my daughter. My boyfriend has actually left to go stay with his kids elsewhere, so we won't be seeing each other for who knows how long, but that feels good for everyone. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're doing well, and we have space here where we can go outside, and that seems to be really helpful for me personally, is spending some time outside, just in nature, looking at it, having my feet on the ground, being in the sun.
I know.
Of that really.
Those few days that we had the cloudy, kind of overcast, cooler weather. I mean, I was getting ready. I was going to go out and work outside in the garden or just be there. And then for like 3 days, right? Not only have we been in the house for a couple of weeks almost, I think. I lost count. But we lost our outside, and I just, that was huge. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce yourself? I mean, I know you from the community here in San Antonio, and as a teacher, as a practitioner, and just maybe just let folks know who you are before we get into the exercise itself.
Sure, thanks. So my name's Heather Wenrich. I did live in San Antonio for many, many years. I had been practicing and teaching meditation at the Shambhala Center there. Now I've made a couple of changes. I now find myself just south of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and still kind of getting my feet on the ground here, and still using meditation to get through this current situation. I'm really happy to share this with others. I hope it'll be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I know that the American Lung Association, just like for folks who are cautious or tepid or uneasy about meditation generally, there's, just simply, I know people who have lung disorders. I was looking at their website, and it's like, look, we need particularly what they call pursed lip breathing and belly breathing, that pulmonary rehab folks use this for folks with asthma, COPD, and all of that to try to create strength in their lungs. And I was listening to Chris Como describing his experience, right?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and he just sounded terrifying. But his commitment was, I'm going to do those deep breaths. I'm going to get out and go outside. I'm going to force myself. And so I just think that, they don't talk about this, but as a former smoker, I know my lung capacity is diminished in ways that I don't fully realize. And so just the exercise of breathing is huge. But in terms of mental health, well-being, de-stressing, centering, I think that this is a life-saving technique itself. People go to the emergency room all the time where we don't want them unless they're deathly ill right now for fear of contracting, COVID-19, from panic attacks because they don't understand stress. So I just want to turn it over to you and really just kind of guide us, offer your wisdom in whatever way that we can share here in San Antonio.
Yeah, well, I've been working with these things for many years, but that doesn't mean that I don't experience stress anymore. Stress is something that life throws at us, and this and some other tools are things we can use to work with it. It's not that we won't feel stress anymore. And since you brought up, a breathing practice, I have one that I'd like to share, because it's really useful in calming the nervous system when we are feeling stress, and perhaps it helps to build lung strength too. I am not making any such claim, but it's something that I learned from Dr. Weil. It's called the 4-7-8 breath. The thing that calms the nervous system is the fact that the out breath is twice as long as the in breath. So what you're doing is breathing in through your nose for a count of 4, filling all the way up, holding it for a count of 7, and then breathing out through your mouth for a count of 8. So it looks like this. So doing that a few times is something you can do anytime to really bring things down a notch when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed. Do it as many times as you need to, and you really can start to feel a relaxing sensation in the body. Some other things you can do on the spot when you're, whatever you're doing, if you're still having to go out and work, which is very stressful right now, is to stop and just listen for a minute. So wherever you are now, you can stop doing anything and just listen. Maybe you hear a fan whirling, or you hear someone with their lawnmower outside, or a dog barking. Right? Placing the attention on something besides the thoughts in your head. So it's a sort of meditation. A listening meditation is really something you can do anytime. Another thing to do, as you had mentioned, stopping breathing, is checking to see, how do I feel? Because when we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed by so many things, we don't realize that we're feeling stress. We don't realize that we might be feeling a number of things. What am I feeling now? You can ask yourself anytime. You may not even really come to a conclusion on that exactly, because you might be feeling a lot of different things. But you might just realize, oh, I'm feeling stressed, or I'm feeling scared. I feel overwhelmed, and those are important things to recognize. I put my hand on my heart when I talk about it, because it really makes you feel your heart. And when you're so much in your head with all the thoughts and worries, bringing it all down here is very grounding. It might make you feel a bit sad even, but they're all important things to be recognizing right now. I hope that makes sense. Versus everything you read in the news, everything you have to deal with personally. You're sanitizing doorknobs, or, maybe having to go out to get food is really stressful. There's just so many things we're working with right now that feeling, really feeling your heart, brings it all back into here and simplifies it from all those external things. When you put your hand there, don't you feel your heart beat? You feel a sense of warmth. Whew. That can even make me a little, feel a little emotional, get a little teary, like, oh, man, it does suck. It does suck. But how would you comfort another person? Right? We have to give ourselves some comfort too. And I think one more thought about that before I give a short meditation instruction is the overwhelm, the sadness, or grief, whatever we might be feeling right now. Those are not the only things we have to feel. I've had the experience of being in deep sadness, and depression. I had a dark night of the soul right before all of this started. And I remember feeling like, oh, I can't stand this anymore. I can't stand me being like this anymore. And I had to, what worked for me was to seek out things that made me feel some bit of inspiration, some bit of happiness. And it's not that my deep, sad feelings went away, but I felt, oh, I can feel this grief and I can have fun. I might cry while I do it, but we have the space internally to hold more than one feeling. We can deal with the heavy feelings going along with this time in our lives, this experience, and we can feel love. We can feel happiness. We can feel the joy of being out in the sun and looking at flowers, or whatever gives people that feeling of joy. And the feeling of joy has become one that I've really liked to stay with. I don't know if that makes sense. This is more of a personal, anecdotal thing, but feeling joy and even the sense of radiating the feeling of joy out from myself has helped me to kind of balance out the stressful, overwhelming feelings with the things that are beautiful in life. Life is complicated. Right? Complex feelings to work with. So if it's a good time, I can give the instruction. Okay. So I'm going to do a very brief guided meditation. If you want a more in-depth training, I'll mention where you can find that at the end. But to begin, you really just want to be seated comfortably. You can sit cross-legged on a cushion or a folded blanket, or you can sit in a chair, and just anywhere that you're comfortable, and even in your car. So sitting comfortably, hands just resting on your legs. You can do a body scan where you move from your head and just relax your scalp, relax your face, relax your jaw, relax your neck and your shoulders. Feel where you're holding tension. Relax your arms. Relax your back and your belly. Let go of any tension there. Relax your legs. And then start to notice the room you're in. You can feel the space of the room. And you can have your eyes open or closed. You can feel the temperature of the air. You feel the temperature of the air on your skin. You feel the cushion you're sitting on. And coming back into your body, you can feel the feeling of your body breathing. And as I mentioned before, a way to do that can be to have your hand on your belly. And feel your belly rising and falling. What I'm talking about is not breathing in any particular way, but just feeling the sensation of your body doing what it does naturally. Relaxed breath. And any sounds you hear can all be part of this time. You hear sounds in the background and you'll start to notice thoughts. And we're not going to stop the thoughts. You can allow them to come into your awareness, and then you can allow them to leave also. So we're not rejecting thoughts, but we're allowing them to pass by and not stay. They'll be there for later. So be having a real sense of gentleness with the thoughts that come up. And so what happens when you notice a thought is that you bring yourself back to the feeling of your body breathing. And if you're human, you'll have to do that many times. So it's just noticing thought, okay, not now, and coming back to the feeling of your body breathing. So that is the basic instruction. It's 10 minutes is enough. 10 minutes a day if people are able to do that. If not, 5 minutes would be a good start too. And it's really about bringing a sense of gentleness to this. You won't meditate once and it's like magic. You're not, stressed, but it does help to calm the nervous system. And in the long term, it's a training of the mind to keep coming back. And that the long-term effects of that are helpful in a different way. And so right now, we're talking about, really stress in the moment. I have so much to say about this, Greg. I don't
That's
know
how
much time you have.
Yeah. Well, I think it is an appropriate place to, you're going to be sharing some links and things, and hopefully we can put up a tip jar for you, but also a place that people can find you online. I know you've been streaming, more meditation classes and conversation online, so I want to include that somewhere. I'm going to point to the corner of the screen as if it's appearing there. But thank you so much. I mean, that's just, I know that this is so critical in such a critical time, in such a terrifying time for a lot of people. And so I thought when you mentioned the arising of emotions, thoughts, I understand. Thoughts are kind of like a chronic condition of being human, as you mentioned. If people experience, and just a quick question as we close out, but I imagine there's some people who are going to do this maybe for the first time and will be just overwhelmed. I'm still overwhelmed sometimes by emotion, and I'm totally out of practice, and I know the benefits of meditation. But if somebody is just overwhelmed with grief or some other anger or something, is that something you say hello and goodbye to like a thought, or do you sit with that?
Emotion is to feel the feeling of it. So, I mean, I think that's something that it takes a lot of care. Feeling the feeling of it without continuing the storyline about what we're feeling.
Right.
So, and those things can be difficult to detach from each other, but that's the main way I would say to work with it, is to really, I mean, I do this like hold yourself, this is feeling really intense. So feeling it and letting go of the storyline. And if people are experiencing something really, really terrifying, like you said, or having a real mental health moment, do not think that anyone would say meditation is the one and only answer. Mm-hmm. We say meditation and medication for true mental health issues.
Okay.
So,
well, maybe we can follow up like a second episode, Extreme Emotion. I've got a fat book on that. It's the East-West dialogue with the Dalai Lama that it's fascinating, really. But if you'd be willing, I would love to connect again and bring you back into our community space.
Great. Well, I hope this is a helpful beginning for people. And if they want to go deeper into meditation, they can find me on Facebook. Tender Diamond is the name of the Facebook page. And we're doing a 30-day meditation challenge with daily teachings and things from myself. So join us if you want to.
Cool. That sounds wonderful. All right. Thank you, Heather.
All the best to everyone.
Yes. We'll talk with you again, I hope.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know what that is, let me find do I have another camera? Golly. So yeah, so our perfect timing because wait, which hand? But for real, the mindfulness, just simple awareness of breath, a guided meditation like that, a 5-minute introduction can, without, I have no question in my mind, can save somebody's life. And when I talk about people going into emergency rooms with panic attacks because they have no idea what's happening to them, I feel like they're going to die. Panic is for real. Now, I'll talk about that firsthand, long time experience. And so please do share that portion. If nothing else in this broadcast, share that portion with folks who may benefit from that, because this is a terrifying time for so many of us. The physical needs, the obvious needs are real. The emotional, the mental, the spiritual needs, however you define that, are as well. And so anyway, I popped up our Patreon here. If there's something useful, you found something useful, enjoyable, kind, bizarre, whatever, and you care to put $1 a month towards the Deceleration Project. If you're not familiar with our work, deceleration.news. We aspire to go nonprofit at a certain point, and really and in the meantime are just trying to maintain, like a lot of folks. So anyway, that's there for you. I'm trying to think what else. If you want to designate it to my mental health and want to put $100 in there a month, I promise that I will not make more videos like you're about to see. But I have just this ego offense when folks like Sam and Suchil and Brian and now Marisol, and they're out there, you know, wisdom of the garden, bringing nature's keepers into medicine, whatever they're doing. And I'm just here to say that I'm in there too. I don't know what I'm streaming on right now, whether this broke or we have some like breaking equipment in here, whether this is connected with the last one or you guys like popped up on this. But if you just popped up, it'll make sense if you see the rest of the broadcast. But I will close. Dearly, dearly love all you guys. We try to host artists, visual artists, musicians, poets. We had Vocab, the poet laureate of San Antonio, on recently. Seba Ili, Ila Minori, George Garza Jr., Marisol's read on here before. And that's where we throw up those tip jars, because we know the arts right now has been totally defunded in the city of San Antonio. Well, not totally. The city's money is disappearing, and that's going to affect a lot of folks. The ability to gig and to get out and play and perform. So we do want to offer support there. And beyond that, provide real resources, information for folks to access, to continue not only to support one another, hold each other up in a very, very difficult time, but to also organize and be able to push back on institutional power, political, the weight of the political structure that's falling on us right now, in addition to the coronavirus. So anyway, I'll close there. Patreon's up, deceleration.news if you're not familiar with us at all. And here's my attempt to offer my wisdom of the earth for y'all.